So, good morning, everyone. We will start our program today with the usual prayer. Sarve bhavantu sukhina, sarve santu niramay, sarve bhadrani paschantu, ma kaschit dukh bhag bhavet. In the last two talks, we talked about the possibility of existence of God. In the last one, we discovered both through the modern science and through the Vedic writings that a substantial part of the existence is in the form of non-manifested universe, which cannot be understood unless we understand what is non-manifest. We looked at the writings of the modern science that even of the 4% observed universe, 99.9% is actually non-manifest. Similarly, we saw the writings of the Vedas and the Upanishad and also Bhagavad Gita, in which it has been said that only a small little particle of me is holding this entire universe. Now, I would like to correct here one of my observations in the last talk. What Sri Krishna said in Bhagavad Gita that I am holding this whole universe in a small little particle of mine, that is in chapter 10, not in 7, as I mentioned before. In the 42nd verse of chapter 10. Now, today we would like to understand this non-manifest in the individual self, in my own self. How do I understand the non-manifest part which we have been talking about in the last two talks? I will take a number of examples to explain that how we can understand this non-manifest in our own body, in our own constitution. We talked about this very briefly when I was mentioning about different layers of the human body. And we talked about in that the body and the senses and the mind and the intellect and the soul. But today we will talk about this non-manifest, whether we call it soul or consciousness or Chaitanya, in greater detail with specific examples. So let me begin with the first example. You see, when you are born, or when you are as a fetus in the mother's womb, you grow on your own. It is not like somebody putting the part of an engine or a motor car from outside, but there is an inside force which develops and which brings your eyes out, your ears out, your nose out, and your hands out. All those organs which develop inside you as a fetus, they develop from a force which resides inside. It is not put, from outside by somebody else. So we must admit that there is a force inside me which grows and which brings, which is very intelligent, which is very, I would say, powerful, which brings out all these elements of my body out, whether they are senses, whether they are internal organs, whether it is my skin, whether it is my mind, all that grows because of that force residing inside me. This applies exactly to a tree, because the seed, when you look at the seed, you find nothing inside. But when it grows, you see the seed has the branches, the leaves, the flowers, the fruit, everything is inside coded into that seed. And that non-manifest develops into the form of a big tree when you, put it into the earth. This is one example which shows that there is a force inside which grows and which develops us into a human being. Now that is not true for the things which are made by human being. What we make, we put together various things and we make, for example, we have to make a car or a aircraft. We put together hundreds and thousands of small, parts and join them together and make an aircraft or a car. In our case, it is exactly different. It is grow from inside through that intelligence force which gives birth to all those things. So that is one very scientific and very deep explanation of the force residing inside us, which is non-manifest, but which manifests in the form of our body organs. That is one. Now, the continuation of that is that this very force sustains our body. When we eat our food, there's some force which digests the food, converts that into various body parts. When we sleep, who brings that sleep? How our body is regenerated during the sleep. We take rest and when we get up, we are energetic. So that same force continues with us throughout our life to sustain our life and our energy. That is why when, for example, you have a small little cut on your body, immediately the whole body starts working together. The blood which comes out, it starts getting, getting a sort of blood cloud forms there. So the blood stops coming out, the bleeding stops. And then the healing process inside starts because of that intelligent force residing inside the body. So if we observe our day-to-day sustenance, every single activity which we do, it is sustained by that inner force which governs our daily routine, right from early morning till late night and the next day and the next day. So this is one example which I would like to give to explain that there is an unknown manifest force inside us which is far more powerful than the manifested part of the body, and that force governs everything within us. Now let me take another example. Now you see in a modern world we have a computer. Now computer has a hardware, you can see hardware all around, you can touch it, you can feel it. But you have a software inside the computer which you cannot see, which you cannot touch, which you cannot even feel, but it works and it makes the whole thing operate. If there is no software inside, the computer will be, it will not be possible to operate that computer. That hardware will be absolutely useless. So it is exactly in the same way. It is not the same, but it is in the same way. It operates from inside, from non-visible way, but it it manipulates the entire system of your hardware, and that is the power of that software which is non-manifest. Now don't compare the non-manifest part of human being and that of a computer, because there's tremendous difference between the life force and the software, and that is a different subject. But here what I'm talking about is that they operate in the same way. They are both non-manifest and they are both very powerful, which make things happen. So this is the second example to make us realize there is something inside which operates and which makes us function. Now I want to take a very simple example to explain it further. Now we eat food. Food is gross. We can touch it, we can smell it, we can see it. Uh, but food is essential for us to live. If we cannot, if we don't get food, maybe after a while we will have difficulty in sustaining ourselves. But with food, without food, you can live for 2 months, maybe some people for 3 months, and some people even longer. But what about water? Water is more subtle than food. Food is gross. Food is more gross than water. Water is less gross or more subtle than food. But without water, how many days can we live? Maybe 5 days, 4 days, 6 days, I don't know. But it would be definitely much less than what you can live without food. So the water is less gross, but more powerful in that sense. And then what about air? Now air has become very, very subtle. It becomes absolutely subtle. You can't even see it with your eyes. When the wind blows, you can feel it, but you can't see it. But how many minutes can we live without air? Without water, we can live for a week, for example. But without air, maybe 5 minutes, maybe 7 minutes. I don't know. People can practice and can live with 10 minutes without air. But beyond that, it would be almost impossible to live. And that is very subtle. The more subtle it becomes, the more powerful it is. And if we go one step further, this, the space which is existing all around is even far more subtle than the air. Now imagine without space, can we exist? Nothing can exist without space. Space provides the theater for every single operation we do. Not only we do, but all the planets and galaxies do. And that space is even more subtle than uh, uh, than the air we talked about. And as you realize that the things become more and more subtle, they go beyond our sense organs, they become more and more powerful. And this is exactly what happens to human body. This is what happens to the life, जिसको हम कहते हैं ना संस्कृत में जीव और जीवात्मा. Now that is far more subtle than our visible parts of our body, whether it is body, senses, even mind we can feel it, even intellect we can feel it, but we can never feel the jivatma, because the more powerful things become, the more subtle they become. And this is precisely the atomic principle as well in the modern science. The more you break a particle, the more powerful it becomes. So this is another example to explain that the non-manifest soul is far more powerful than the manifest body, and this non-manifest soul is not a subject of our sense organs or mind to grasp. So that is another example to explain the invisible force inside our cells, that is the Jivatma. Now let me take another example, which is a very important example. You see, when we sleep in the night, we have a dream state. In Sanskrit, it is called Tejas Avastha. And the current state in which we are all sitting is Vaisnava. Then comes Tejas. Tejas means that you look like, or you live like Tej, you live like the rays of the sun. You exist in the form of rays. That is the basic meaning of Tejas. Now in the dream state, what happens? Just think about it a little bit. In the dream state, your body is taking rest, your senses are taking rest. But you see, you have two, three things happening inside. You have a projection inside your mind of a dream. And you are also an actor in that process. You always exist in a dream. Now the same mind divides into two different fabrics. It's only one mind. Because of some force inside, it gets divided into two different fabrics. One fabric which is projecting on the screen, that becomes all that you see. You can see a full film on that screen, and then other fabric becomes yourself that you are seeing. So the same fabric becomes the object and the subject. It is divided into two parts. Though you cannot imagine that when you are in a living state, in a Vaisnava state, in the waking state. But actually, when you get up from the dream, you realize that there were two different states there. The two fabrics, how they came, where they came from. Now that fabric comes from the force of that inner non-manifest uh, force which exists inside us. And that force is able to manipulate the structure of your mind in such a way that it can, you know, divide it into two or three or five different, fabrics. And you see all that whole big screen in projecting in your mind while you are yourself a player in that whole process. So that is another way of explaining that power of the non-manifest, which is Jivatma inside us. Now, I would like to take another example to explain this. Now, we talked about the theory of karma briefly, and we also realized that some people are born on the streets. They don't have enough to eat. Their health is also suffering. Some people are born in palaces. They are looked after. They are fed in golden plates and with silver spoons, and there's plenty for them. Now imagine a child of just born child has not done any karma, and therefore why this punishment? God cannot give this kind of injustice to two different children while they are just born. They have done no karma in this life. So we presume and we explain that this is the result of their past karma. That is what we said prarabdha. Now, if we believe in past karma and if we believe in rebirth, then what is this rebirth? What comes as rebirth? The body is destroyed on my death. My body will be consigned to fire. It will be gone. My mind will disappear. My intellect will disappear. My sense organs will disappear. So, what is that which is reborn? Obviously, it is that invisible, intangible, non-manifest force which we call Jivatma, which will be born again. If we believe in the theory of rebirth, we have to believe that there is a non-manifest part inside us which stays even after our death, and that part is reborn in the form of a new life afterwards. So that again proves that there is a non-manifest inside us which is even able to survive our death, and that is reborn once again. So that is another proof to tell you that there is a non-manifest inside us, inside our body. Now let me also give you some example of some studies. I know a person called Michael Cremo. He is a he lives in Los Angeles in USA. I know him, and he has written a book called Human Devolution. He hasn't written Human Evolution because Charles Darwin wrote Evolution of Life, and he wrote Devolution of Life. In his book, he has actually given various examples based on his research and survey that lot of people in their childhood and thereafter have told him the experiences of their past life. They have told him the place there where they lived. They have told him in which kind of condition they were living, in which country they were living, what work they were doing. There are numerous examples quoted in that book of the people who have been interviewed in their current life. They are actually narrating their past lives to that person. This has also been done by a person called Brian Weiss. He has written a book called Same Soul, Many Lives. He has narrated a large number of cases of the people who have been interviewed by him, and they have been able to tell him about their past lives. If there is a past life and if there is a present life, obviously something survives this death, which comes in the form of a new life. And if he comes with the memories of the past life, how do those memories come from? Where do they come from? They come from that non-manifest. That non-manifest is able to bring back those memories to you in the next birth. In fact, there are many people in this world who perform what we call hypnosis. They actually perform hypnosis. Uh, Many people, in fact, also used to do it in his early life. By performing hypnosis, the people is taken back into his previous birth or previous lives, and then those people are able to tell you the experiences in what state they lived, where they were, how, and those can be actually verified by the current generation by going to those places in the and talking about those people when they died, how many generations ago they died. All those things can be actually verified, and this has been carried out. So hypnosis also proves that there is a non-manifest which is powerful, which survives death, and which comes in the form of rebirth. So all these examples which I have given, they firmly establish that there is a known manifest inside us. There is an intelligent consciousness, Chaitanya inside us, which governs our entire existence, which is the cause of our birth, which is the cause which sustains our life, and which is the cause which survives our death and goes beyond and then goes into your new life. So this is what the non-manifest at individual level. That is what we call Jivatma is there. Now I would like to uh, uh, talk about a few slokas in various texts to explain this, how they have explained this process in our being, in our, the human constitution. Now, there's one in the in there are actually three verses I'll take from Bhagavad Gita and two from Upanishads. So let me take verse number 13 of chapter second from Bhagavad Gita. Now this reads like this: Dehino asmanyatha dehe kumaram yovnam jara tatha dehantar prapti dirastra na muhati. That the soul continuously passes from one stage of life, that is from uh, you know uh, you grow from childhood to adulthood to old age, and the soul continuously passes from one stage to another. And therefore, the people who know about this state of soul, they do not get bewildered. They are not surprised because that they know that there is a constant insight. There is a constant factor inside. It's precisely like in a wheel, and there is an axis which is constant and the wheel is rotating all the time. Precisely the same way, there is a constant inside us, and that constant, you know, moves whenever, whatever is the state of your body, whether you move from childhood to adulthood to youth, and youth to old age, and that constant remains and you keep moving. And therefore, the wise people who know that constant, they are not bewildered by that process. So that is one verse I would like to mention, that there is a constant inside us which is non-manifest, which is always present, and around that presence of that constant, the axis or the wheel of life moves from one stage to another. The second is, that is also from chapter 2nd, 22nd verse. वांसांसि जीर्णानि यथा विहाय नवानि गृह्णाति नरोपराणि तथा शरीराणि विहाय जीर्णान्यानि अन्यानि संयाति नवानि देहि. That this is very often quoted verse from Bhagavad Gita, that as your clothes become worn out, they become torn, then you throw those clothes away and put on the new clothes. In the same way, the non-manifest Chaitanya of your body throws away the body when it becomes useless, torn, and non-functional, and takes a new body. So the soul is taking body as a cloth. So the body is a cloth, the senses are part of that, the mind and intellect are part of that cloth, and the body takes that cloth and it changes whenever this cloth becomes torn and useless. So this is the second verse from Bhagavad Gita. Now the third verse is from chapter 14, verse number 3, which reads like this: Mam yonir mad brahm tasmin garbham dadamyam sambhavaya sarvabhutanam tato bhavati bharat. The meaning of this is that this Mahat means the nature, the Prakriti, with all the three gunas, the Trigunmayi Maya, what we call it. This Trigunmayi Maya or this Prakriti, this nature, is the place of birth, that is the yoni of the world. That is the place where the conception takes place. This yoni of this world is the nature, the Trigunamayi Maya, made of 5 great elements. And in that yoni, I put the Chetan Tattva to create this life. So the Chetan Tattva is put by the Almighty into the nature. So you see, the nature is our body, and the Chetan Tattva is the one which actually works as intelligent force inside our body to develop this body and to sustain this body. This is what it means at the individual level. At the universal level, it has a different meaning, but at the individual level, this is the meaning that in this yoni, the Chaitanya force, the life force is put by the Almighty, which grows into this, what we call human being or being as such. This being is product of the two, that is the Mahat Tattva, that is the Trigunamayi Maya, that is Prakriti, and the life force. These two combined, put together, makes this body. So these are the 3 verses which explain this process very profoundly in Bhagavad Gita. Then I'll take 2 verses from Upanishad. One is from Mundak and another is from Katha. Now Mundak Upanishad is it is 3rd chapter, 1st part and 8th verse. It says that the human soul cannot be seen by eyes, nor can it be grasped by speech, nor any other senses. It cannot be grasped by austerity or action. Only when the inner being is purified, only when the inner being is purified by knowledge and meditation, one can behold this invisible spirit. Now this verse goes a little further and tells us that we cannot see this invisible force unless our inner being is purified and we are in the state of meditation. Once we are purified and we are in the state of meditation, you can feel this inner being and you can realize this inner being. This is what Mundak Upanishad says in this respect. And there's one last verse which I would like to quote, which I find a fantastic verse from Katha. This is 224 Katha Upanishad, which simply says, which is a very, very fascinating verse. When I was reading it first time, I couldn't believe what it says, but it's a profound verse. It says that after the soul leaves the body, the body is freed from its casing, and thereafter nothing remains whatsoever. Nothing remains whatsoever. So everything in the body is the soul. That is what it says. And at the end it says, this is the truth. This is what is the truth. That once the soul leaves the body, nothing remains. the casing is freed, the casing start decomposing and finish it. Now this is what the meaning of what we call non-manifest inside our body is. And I give you one or two practical experiences of mine which I have felt. The first time when I went to a mortuary, that was in Bahrain when I was posted there, and I was looking after what you call Indian community affairs as well. And people die, and therefore sometimes you have to visit the mortuary. It was my first experience to visit a mortuary where you find hundreds of dead bodies just stored there. I couldn't believe that what happens to the human body after this so-called Chaitanya leaves the body, after this non-manifest, the consciousness, whatever name we give, the Atma, it leaves the body is what? It's worse than a vegetable. Vegetable can still live for several days if you leave it alone, but the body cannot live even for a few hours after the soul has left it. So this is the state. I had this experience recently on TV channels when the COVID patients, they died and nobody was even ready to touch their body. You see. So what happens to this body? The body becomes untouchable. So everything in the body is that soul, is that is the Chaitanya, that force, that intelligence which sustains this body. That is everything. And I think with this experience, if you think of a dead body, if you visit a hospital with dead bodies sometime, you will realize that there is nothing but the power of non-manifest soul which runs this body, which sustains this body, which is force behind everything which we do in the body. And I will finish with again repeating Kenopanishad that this force you cannot see, you cannot hear, because this is the force which enables you to see, this is the force which enables you to hear, this is the force which enables your mind to think. Therefore, you can't even think of that force from the mind. So I think I'll stop here. If you have any questions, please let me know. But I think if you practically experience little bit about the bodies, about the dead bodies, about the bodies after the life force has left that body, you will realize that body is nothing, and we should not have unnecessary attachment to body, because all the time we are engrossed with body, whether it is decorating the body from the morning till the evening, or whether whatever we do we only think about body, we never think about soul. And that concept will change once you start thinking a little bit more about the non-manifest part of this body or this constitution, which is so powerful, which is so intelligent, which sustains everything, which is called a Jivatma or a human being. So I would finish it today here. And in the next part, we will take about this non-manifest in the universal sense. We will talk about Paramatma, the God, the Ishwar, whatever name we give. Since we started, does God exist? We will finish with that, whether the God exists or not. So we'll take that part at the end. Today we have taken this part at the individual level, that Jivatma and its force and how it exists. If we start realizing this, that I am a Jivatma, I am not a body, I think our life will change. Thank you very much.